Chloe. You
Hi,
look
how are
beautiful.
you? So
Um,
do you.
so let's see. I'm going to invite some folks up. I'm hoping that they join. I don't know if Solo Mommyhood, if you can join us, but I would love for you to join. Okay, I invited you. Solo Mommyhood is a Native American two-spirit um,
Wonderful.
activist in San Francisco, responsible for so much stuff that's been and a really great educator and has educated me a lot on Native American erasure in our public education system.
Oh,
They've fought to remove racist statues in our city and succeeded. And so I'm hoping that they can join us. But if they can't, I get it. Solo Mommyhood is a solo parent, so they may be picking up kids. But I've invited Solo Mommyhood. I've also invited um, Doros Slade Gale. I don't know if she can join us because I know she has another meeting. Hey,
hi, how are you? How are you?
so I want to. Yay. Okay, so I'm inviting some folks up. Yay. So
Hey.
I'm glad that you can join. What our goal here today is this is the beginning. Oh, you look fabulous as always.
Love the hair.
Your hair
That's
game is
gorgeous.
like the best.
I did
Let
it
me
again
just
last
say.
night.
Hair is
It's time for a
gorgeous.
change.
That's ridiculous. That
Oh
gorgeous.
my
The hair
God.
is beautiful.
Thank you.
I
And that
want, I want. Um, so I'm inviting some folks. I'm hoping the goal here is I've been hearing a lot of people talk about, Chloe and I have been having this conversation and we wanted to bring in other folks. But there's a lot of folks who want to talk about attacks on public education. And a lot of the
Mhm.
folks that are having those conversations, I'm grateful for that. But they haven't been doing the work for as long as, there's some folks who've been doing the work for a long time. And I think we need to center conversations around folks that, you know, have been fighting for education justice for a long time, educators who know like what these attacks are really about, Black organizers, Indigenous organizers who understand like what's at stake, and also trans and LGBTQ organizers as well. So I'm inviting folks. I don't know if they can join. I'm personally inviting them to come up if they can, and if you can't, that's fine too. I know some folks are going to be listening along. But Jen, if you want to introduce yourself, and Chloe, if you want to introduce yourself, I'm going to click through and see if I can invite more folks to join.
Perfect.
Sure.
Chloe, do you want to go first? Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, I'm Chloe Telle. I'm in the state of Missouri, and we're Missourian up here. So, yeah, I'm an educator, but I've been an equity worker for a couple of years due to the fact, I mean, folks, when you see especially women of color in this work, we're not here, listen, we're not here by choice.
Mhm.
And especially depending on your state. So that's where I'm coming from this evening.
Well,
And
sorry.
yeah, no, Jen, I want you to introduce yourself.
And then I'm from California and Temecula, and our school board was taken over by Christian nationalists. And so they started off with a CRT ban, as they call it, and now they're moving into trying to get into the books. So they're doing the social studies curriculum right now. So it's a big mess here.
Oh my goodness.
Yay, Rob, you're here. Can you introduce yourself? I'm
Uh-huh.
glad that you could join.
No problem. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. I'm in the state of Colorado, and have been fighting Christian nationalism, which is now translated into the attacks on public education. I got started with that a long time ago, 12 years ago or something like that, and it's just been a natural progression as the attacks have increased within the public education system to a lot of similarities, a lot of similar groups. And I, uh, I I am primarily here just to support Allie, as I know that she's been having some difficulties lately, and to do whatever I can to amplify those marginalized voices that you just mentioned.
I appreciate you, and I really do appreciate the fact that you have a lot of knowledge and expertise. And I think I think challenging is a lot of us are seeing these attacks nationally. I think Moms for Liberty is becoming a little more visible. They're not just these parents' rights groups. People are starting to see the connections. But what's frustrating to me is that we're not going to the experts on what's actually happening. And one of the things that I really appreciate about you, Rob, is that you have a lot of expertise. You've been involved in this for a long time, and you know about Seven Mountains Mandate, stuff that I don't know anything about. And we need to have the right folks in the room if we're going to solve problems, because if we don't have, the history there, and people don't have the knowledge of who's behind these attacks and, what work people have been doing, then we're just kind of trying to reinvent the wheel, and we're not working effectively. So I just want to say I really do appreciate you and your knowledge. You have a lot more knowledge than I do about that specific aspect of these attacks. And so I'm just really grateful for your voice.
Whatever I can do to help.
So I'm inviting, let's see. Oh, so I wanted to invite SD Inc. on, and I don't think she has guest access, and I think it could be, she may not have enough. Yeah, she doesn't have enough followers. So she can participate in the comments, but I think everyone needs to go and follow her account so that she can join us. She's a Latina educator in California. She does diversity, equity, and inclusion work. She's also done youth development, youth leadership work. She's the daughter of Chicano activists. And so she understands, she has a family history in organizing folks in California. And so she'll be participating in the comments. I'm sorry you can't join Lucia, but everyone please follow her and help her amplify her account so she can join us in future conversations, because she's been doing a lot of work. She's also very active on Instagram, so you can see a lot of her there, and maybe we can also bounce back and forth, because I know there's folks that are on IG that are not here. And then Amy, did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I wasn't sure if I would be actually on the live with you all in this panel. So I'm happy to just listen for a while. I actually, but I've been thinking about how to introduce myself given the topic. I've worked in education for many years teaching resiliency, which may be needed more and more by educators and by students. Right. Although now they're going after social emotional learning, which would include like resiliency classes. I mean, it is horrifying. I'm an activist. I'm a Chinese American. I'm a social justice activist, a climate activist, and a political activist who's run for office. And I'm an author of books on the CIA and on education, and particularly state of mind in the classroom for teachers. But I'm just going to listen, because I'm here to really hear what you all have to say. If I have anything to say, I'll let you know, but I think I just need to listen, because I don't know as much about Moms for Liberty except what I see on TikTok. I know they're in Temecula. Is that right? Did I pronounce that right?
Yes.
And it's just horrifying. So I'm going to listen and learn. Thank you so much. Thank you, Allie, for having me. I appreciate it. If you need me to get off, let me know.
No, and I appreciate you. I think there's so many facets. I think part of the problem people have been dealing with is we see an individual attack in our school district. There are specific actors involved, but it's hard sometimes to see the national connections. And for any of us who've been involved over a period of time, we start to see patterns, and then we start to realize, hey, they're doing the same thing in another town. But in one town, it might be Christian nationalists. In another town, it might be attacks on merit-based education, or attacks on ethnic studies, or attacks on trans students. And it feels like there's a confluence of groups. They're working in coordination. They have common goals, which is dismantling public education, targeting progress in our education system. But the individual actors can be different. And so in a way, it's like political theater. People, they're pretending to be all these different groups. And I think, Rob, one of the things that you've been really good at is, it's like, how do we get beyond just, in Colorado Springs, these are the names of the people there, and in San Francisco, these are the names of people here, really starting to see patterns and starting to see how people, what are the different groups, or what are the different telltale signs that, some of these activities are not authentic. And so I I also want to say, Amy, that your voice is actually very important, because even though places like Temecula maybe, or in St. Louis where Chloe is, it's black and white, we have a lot of anti removal of black history and stuff. In cities like San Francisco and New York, they are pitting Asian Americans and Black Americans against one another. And there's a lot of disinformation that's being shared in the Asian American community, telling them that anti-racism is anti-Asian. And it's important, I think, for us to have these spaces, because we need to share information and, help each other see more sides of the, I don't know, like the beach ball is kind of, that's my metaphor, is that there's multiple sides. And if everyone isn't in the room, then we're not really seeing the full picture. So I was hoping, Rob, maybe on that note, you were good at kind of outlining some of the key things that people should be looking for when it comes to some of these activities. You're in Colorado Springs. It's different than San Francisco. And yet when you talk, I hear some similarities between what you're experiencing and what I'm hearing from Jen in Temecula, California, and also Chloe, because you guys are all kind of dealing with some of that Christian nationalist stuff. I was wondering if you're comfortable just sharing a little bit about that, just to give people, start to build a framework.
Yeah. So one of the, before we get into the specifics, I was just going to go back to something that you were mentioning, and it's something that I've kind of started. It's becoming more clear how much the public education opposition depends on this, and they are kind of depending on us all thinking that there are different things happening to all of us at the same time. Because people who are, fans of public education, especially, people that are on the Democrat, liberal, progressive side, the one thing we're really good at is fragmenting each other and fragmenting a particular movement, and not really checking in with the other people who've been doing this for a long time, or thinking that the thing that is happening to us is so much different than what is happening to someone else that there's not any really good way for us to collaborate. And they depend on that. They depend on that aspect of our nature, because the reality is, and the very first thing to accept is that this is happening nationwide, and you're not a special snowflake. There's nothing different about your town. There's nothing different about your state. It's the same people. It's the same organizations using the same playbook in all of these places at the same time. Just accepting that reality would be very beneficial for everyone. Because there are nuances, there's differences here and there, depending on the region or the city or the county that you're in, but it's still all ultimately the same thing, and we all have a lot to learn from each other. But
I really appreciate that. I really appreciate it. I want to say, in San Francisco, we're all constantly saying, oh, we're not Florida. Good thing we're not Florida. And I'm like, same people are doing the same things in Florida, So I don't know if you want to hold on that really quick. I'd love to introduce some other folks that I've asked to join.
Yeah, go ahead.
Aaron Jones is a DEI educator, former teacher, and also former candidate for state superintendent, right? And so she's also travels around. And so I really value your expertise, Aaron, because you've been able to kind of see what's going on in other states. And so I don't know if you want to do just a quick intro and then maybe speak a little bit to that.
Sure. I've been in education for 32 years. So I was a classroom teacher. I've taught literally everything from 4th grade to 12th grade, English, history, French immersion, Spanish, PE, literally. I've done almost every subject area. And then I've taught from North Philadelphia to South Bend, Indiana. I actually taught at Pete Buttigieg's school when he was in 8th grade. He was just little Pete then, but I taught English there, and then taught ELL in Columbus, Ohio, and then moved here to Washington State and taught here on both sides of our state, which, if you know anything about Washington State, it's a lot like California in that people know about Seattle and LA, and they think the whole state is that way. And the reality is that first of all, Seattle's not as progressive as it claims to be. But secondly, the east side of our state is more like Arkansas or Tennessee. So
and I've taught on both sides of our state. I actually won Teacher of the Year on the east side of our state. And I believe one of the reasons is when you're 6 feet tall and black, and you're good at what you do, it stands out. So I'm just going to own that I know I'm a great teacher, but part of the reason is I stood out really blatantly in my very white school district. But I also got experience to be in a space with lots of poor white children too. And one of the things that I see across the country, and just to complicate things, my Black husband was a pastor in a predominantly white evangelical church. And so we have gotten to witness from the inside the narratives and rhetoric and propaganda. Our church no longer exists because of this. So we watched the dynamics around George Floyd just create so much tension between the Black people in our church and the white people in our church. I realized after 25 years of serving in this church that people didn't actually know me. They knew what I could do for them. They knew I was good at teaching, but they didn't actually know me and know my story or know how that I moved through the world differently. And so we've gotten to see on the inside the fear that is put into white evangelicals' minds about us and about these stories. And the irony of all that is if you actually read the Bible's pretty clear about acknowledging your sin, owning it, owning your history. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves, seek my face, turn from their wicked ways. But white evangelicals don't want to do that. And so there's this narrative that's been sown across the country that we don't, that history happened so far back, we just want to move forward. We're not going to talk about this stuff. And I think because white evangelicals were taught to not question authority, they also don't question authority. And so whatever authority tells them, whether it's the pastor or the political leader, whatever they are told by that person, they are taught that critical thinking is actually antithetical to the Bible, which I would argue against. But anyway, that's a little bit about me. I'm a mom of 3 adult kids. 2 of them are in education now. And we are all seeing this. We're all seeing this in all the different spaces that we inhabit.
Thank you. And then I also want to introduce another person who's joined us. And I want to say just thank you so much for joining us. Oshi Speaking is that handle. I love the fact that you are so good at just kind of verbalizing like your thinking process. And you also, I find it really interesting that you started out, you said more conservative, and have had to kind of go through this process, which isn't something I relate to, because I've gotten more radical, but I always started out as somebody who was, Democratic and stuff. And so I don't know if you want to introduce yourself, but I'm really grateful for you being in this space and sharing kind of your knowledge as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate the invitation. My name is Jen Kinney. I live in Detroit, Michigan, and I am a mother of teenage boys. I'm sort of fortunate in this entire discussion to be living in a predominantly Black city, sending my kids to a predominantly Black school, but I'm very passionate about engaging my people. And I've been on a decolonizing journey over 10 years now. So I was the libertarian, more conservative, white evangelicalism, the whole 9 yards. And so as I started my journey in what's, what some coin divesting from this colonial construct of whiteness, my eyes have been open to so many things. And to Erin's point, like a lot of the things that Erin was pointing out, it's like, yes, you might be in these liberal spaces, but they're predominantly white. Yes, you might be in a church that claims to follow Jesus, but they're predominantly white people. So it's like this thread that carries throughout all of this is whiteness. And so my passion and my interest is trying to bring people down off the rafters, so to speak, because so many people have fallen for the right-wing narratives, the CRT boogeyman, hook, line, and sinker. Everybody's, all these white people are triggered if you say you have white privilege, but if you're able to actually strip it down and explain it and have conversations, people are like, oh, yeah, I guess that makes sense. So I'm trying to really step in the gap and have some discussions, but it is really difficult. And I do feel passionately about education and about what's happening in this country around education. And I feel called to be active in it. But again, I feel like I'm in a bit of a bubble being in Detroit. I really am surrounded by such great educators and people who are passionate about speaking the truth and teaching the truth. So I'm trying to figure out right now, how do I get involved in my predominantly white school districts around me to agitate and engage and challenge these narratives that are being passed?
I appreciate that question. And I think that's a common question that we've been talking about, me and Chloe. How do we, there's folks who've been doing the work, and then there's folks that are coming in to the work and wanting to be involved. How do we amplify the work that folks have already been doing? And how do we also, a lot of white folks are asking, how do I engage in a way that's productive and helpful and not like performative, or like safety pins and hats and jump, it's like, how do we get pantsuits, like how do we actually support the work that's already been going on, right? The civil rights movement never stopped, but now is a new time. So, and we do need this movement to be intersectional. So I just wanted to hand it off to Chloe because we've been having this conversation, and I'd love for you to just share some thoughts.
So here's the first thing that we have to do. And I like what Rob says. Let me harken back to it. Folks, how do you drown when you're in the ocean? You panic. You have all this hysteria steadily coming at you, and you like, dang, how do I navigate it? I got to do this movement over here. I got to do that. The goal is to wear you out so you stop. I want every activist on here and everybody who is serious about this work to first of all engage in self-care. That's the first. Let me tell you all something. Baby, we keep talking about being students of history. We're not students of history because the answers are there. Dr. King gave up, yes, mom lady, and you worn out. But we're going to stop that today. We're not going to claim that. And let me tell you how we're going to stop that. First of all, here's what I want everybody on here to do. I want you to listen to the following steps that Dr. King gave us. First of all, you have to do a self-purification. You have to. I don't know what it looks like for each person. For me, I'm a person of faith, so it's prayer. For somebody else, it might be meditation. But folks, if they wear you out, they've won. And that's the goal. After that, we have to educate ourselves. I'm giving you the steps right now. You see how we're all coming together and we're talking about what's going on in our different states? Folks, this is what I've been trying to do for over a year. Get people from different states to come together and talk about what's going on. Because what you will find is a common script. They're reading from the same script. These folks aren't smarter, nor are they creative, nor are they students of history or nothing else. They're agitators. They're here to, folks, we're going to keep it real right now. The root of all this is anti-Blackness. When they get done eating me, they're going to eat every last one of you. The end, point blank, simple, period. You're welcome. If we do not deal with the country's issue with Black folks, we're all done, whether we are LGBTQ, whatever. Because, see, can I tell you all a secret? When we went soft with Black folks, that's why they're going hard with everybody else. You're welcome. So first, you got to take care of yourself, educate yourself, and then fight the injustice. We all got to come together just like they did and form. We must form. And this is one thing. Progressive, y'all so terrible at this. Can I tell you what you're terrible at? I'm going to talk about you right now to your faces. I am not two-faced. You all are terrible at coming together and putting a sound structure together. This is why I told them in Missouri. They online sniping at each other. I said, baby, you coming up against a well-oiled machine and you playing. When you have dark money like Alec, the Heritage Foundation, Christopher Rufo, and all these other folks sitting up funding your foolishness, you got time to get online and be silly and to do all this other overly emotional stuff. We don't have time for it because we have to get our organization together, and we're not doing it. Okay? This is how in Missouri, and I'm going to just tell you all right now, Missouri, this is how we were able to win school board races. Folks, I've been all over the state. I've gone to places where, let me tell you all something, I've gone to places where the only thing black at night, honey, was an open door and won. And I'm giving you the steps tonight on how you all can win. Oh, Alec is ridiculous, Sister Girl. Whew.
So I want to say, if folks don't know, Chloe has expertise actually fighting against these anti-woke activists in Missouri. They are, as she says, competing with Florida to be the worst. And, you know, she's been successful in fighting at a state level, in organizing. And, you know, I think it's important for us to rely on expertise, you know, in Missouri. And also, I'm really grateful. I mean, this group right here represents
You're awesome.
the diversity, right, of our country. I want to introduce some new folks who've joined us. Desi, I'm really grateful that you could join us. And Aaron, you too. Desi, if you want to just do a quick intro, just so folks know who you are and how you're coming into this conversation. I'm really grateful that you could be here.
Allie, thank you for having this panel. Hi, panel. I'm Desi. I am located in Atlanta, Georgia, and I am a childbirth educator. So I work around perinatal mental health. I'm getting my certification, so I'll officially be able to do counseling in perinatal to help to reduce some of that trauma that we can experience, so we can talk about it a little bit more. But just hearing Chloe fired up really fires me up to continue the work that I'm doing. I'm not tired either, Chloe, because I know that the system, that's what they want us to do, to fight against each other. So I'm just going to keep spreading the information that we have about childbirth education, so families can take their children out of the system and take themselves out of the system. Thank you.
And then Aaron, I'm glad that you could join us as well. I really deeply appreciate you. You're actually in the heart of like the Northwest, which I guess, like California, I think often thinks that they don't have any work to do because all the stuff is happening in the South.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I'd love for you to chime in and just introduce yourself and maybe share any thoughts that you have based on the conversation we're having.
Yeah. Hey guys. I just popped in because I actually am between sessions working. So I just have a few minutes, and I just wanted to pop in and listen and be in the, show up to be here. But yeah, I'm in Southern Oregon, and I was talking with a friend of mine who's up in McMinnville, which is outside of Portland, and she's a teacher, and she was at a panel about, candidates or whatever. And she's like, oh my God, Aaron, they were saying all the things you've been telling me that people are saying. And it was just like, she's like, it's here, it's right here. And I'm like, yeah, it's everywhere. And so, I feel like this conversation's important for everybody all over the country. And I'm just glad to listen and hang out. But I'll have to drop down in like 15 minutes or so. So good to see you guys.
Thanks. So with that, I want to hand it back to Rob. You've been really good at outlining, okay, let's not focus on the individual people and the individual dramas, but let's start to get aware of the tactics and some of the language so that people can start to become aware of, what's the same everywhere? What's this national coordinated effort, and how can they be aware? And so how are you describing that to folks that maybe aren't in education or politics, but do care about all this stuff?
Yes, I ended up making a list of 10 things, tried to distill it down, like 10 things that I noticed that was going on within Colorado Springs school districts. And then I was hearing about in California and Virginia and Florida and Missouri and, everywhere else this is going on. So the first thing, and see, a lot of times people don't even notice that something is going on within their school boards because it's not, typically, school board meetings were boring. Parents only really had relationships with individual teachers, if they were even doing that, or if they even had the means to do that. And then all of a sudden, COVID was the catalyst. That was, and the Heritage Foundation and others did this very deliberately. They saw that was something, like they did, throughout the right-wing circles. This is something they can get people outraged about, and it's something that's also affecting kids. And that was a way that it spread really fast. But I also think that it was a mistake that they made in certain aspects, because if you're going to get someone's attention, then just start screwing around with their kids, and then you're going to get attention. I think it's why a lot of us, people like us, ended up waking up. So all of a sudden, around the COVID timeframe, you started seeing this initial outrage. All of a sudden, there are parents who are going to school board meetings who are completely outraged about something that they probably shouldn't be outraged about. Then you start noticing an organizational and national influence. You'll start to hear about, or you'll see screenshots of binders with instruction manuals and that kind of thing that are provided by some unknown organization, and usually all those things were provided by Heritage or one of their related organizations. And then all of a sudden, you'll start to see this really, really big anti-teachers union sentiment. That's also a common theme, which that's also important to remember too, is that part of all of this, I was explaining to someone today that the intersection between the Heritage Foundation and an organization in Wisconsin that a lot of people haven't heard of called the Bradley Foundation, another organization backed by a billionaire, their intersection is anti-unions, is union busting. So there's a lot of that that's going on in here too, and you're starting to see that start to spread within Moms for Liberty circles now. Charter schools will also start to become really heavily pushed by people within certain school districts. Local church congregations will start getting involved too. That isn't unique. I mean, I live in evangelical NORAD in Colorado Springs, but that is not uncommon. It's happening in the South. It's happening in California. It's happening in a lot of places. Then you may, and this is where we start deviating a little bit, because I haven't noticed this in every situation, but it is common pattern, is that you'll start getting violent third-party organizations starting to introduce themselves into the mix, whether that's FEC United in Colorado and Michigan, Proud Boys in the Pacific Northwest. They will start to become involved here too, and they're just in California. And they're there just to intimidate. We had militia groups in FEC United, start to make appearances at our school board meetings. As an example, this was in 2021 during that summer, and it is very intimidating. It means guys, walking around, with their firearms, and that's what they're intended to do, is to keep you from coming. This one has been common across the board, and it's a weird one because you're like, well, of course the school should be worried about this. All of a sudden, these school board members who have never mentioned anything about school performance at all will all of a sudden start focusing on reading and math scores out of nowhere. All of a sudden, they're heavily emphasizing academic performance out of nowhere, and it's just to build this narrative that the public school systems are failing. Then as most of the people who are the individuals that are being attacked here are from marginalized communities. So of course the people from the marginalized communities are going to be speaking up and defending themselves and defending their community. And then all of a sudden they're going to start being held responsible for the outrage, for the long meetings, for the things that are being said. This is universal.
You're
and
describing
every person
San
I've ever talked to.
Francisco right now. It's pretty crazy. Yeah. You're describing it.
So and this is also intentional. And this is why I don't even personally go to school board meetings anymore, because I figured out that they aren't making good faith arguments anyway. So what difference does it make? I'm just wasting my time, and they're trying to get me and other people like me agitated so they can then blame me for something that happens. Then early at some point in this process, you're going to start seeing board members flaunting the law, outright. Separation of church and state issues is going to be an easy one. It's a very, very common one. Starting to ignore protections that are in place for the marginalized communities will be in place as well. You'll start seeing them openly flaunting the law. In that will be subtle at first, just a little school board quote that's mentioning Benjamin Franklin, saying that every household needs a Bible to be virtuous, right? Little subtle thing quoting the founders. And then you get to what we've experienced here last Thursday. A superintendent in a neighboring school district is talking about the Seven Mountains mandate and using that as his guidance for how to teach kids respect in schools. This happened last Thursday. So you'll go from one extreme to the other. And then you'll start seeing the dismissal of reasonable voices within the school system. So your teachers who aren't going to put up with this, your administrators, the people who have been there and been successful, been supportive student advocates for a really long time, all of a sudden they will either resign because they're just tired of it, or they'll get fired, or they'll be downsizing within the professional staff, or something like that. Those 10 things I have seen in almost, with the exception of the violent groups, that one is a little bit unique, but it's becoming more and more common. Every single one of those, no matter who I've talked to who's been dealing with this across the country, they're experiencing those things. And and going back to like Chloe's point, they do this on purpose. This is the flood tactic that Steve Bannon and others like him emphasized and used during the Trump administration to wear us out, to keep us distracted, and to keep us fighting amongst ourselves. Because that's another really good point that she made too. She's living my life. It is so frustrating because we spend more time fighting with each other about these silly little details and like nuances, and they are still executing on a long-term plan that they've had in place for 50 years. And we're sitting around fighting with each other about oh, my district is so different. I'm so frustrated at that.
So I want to hear really quickly. I mean, I just need to vent here because I was sitting in these meetings as a school board member. They would pack the meetings, spend a whole hour yelling at us, and then say meetings were taking too long. And I was just like, So I'd love to hear just really quickly from everyone on the panel, what's something that resonates in your area that maybe you thought, initially was just you, and hearing this list of things pops out. And we'll just go in order. So Chloe, Jen, Amy, Erin, Jen, Desi, and Erin again, if Erin's still around, if she can. So Chloe.
So the first thing I noticed in Missouri was the suspicion of teachers. There was this question of when we went on COVID, oh my God, well, why do we need this lesson? Why do we need that lesson? And here's the thing. These folks have weaponized the idea of being a parent. Hello. We have decided to take the dark side of being a parent, and then we cover it up because doesn't it sound good, folks, when it says these parents are concerned? Oh, that sounds good. I'm concerned about my child's test scores. What are you talking about? I just don't want this taught because this is taking up instruction time from children. In fact, folks, Rob, let me go back to something you said. Rob just hitting it. Listen, let me tell you all something. They're so bold now. They announce their plans out loud. Because what did they tell you their plans were for 2024? What's the GOP platform going to be? Protect the children. That is why you're seeing all of this that you're seeing now. So we can say we have protected the children. So that's what we did in Missouri. And so now we have these people. And then the hijacking of the church. My Lord. Rob, you mentioned it. All of you have mentioned it. The hijacking of the church. So when we were initially running school board candidates, we were silly. We were doing traditional campaigning. We had no idea that they had even gotten to the point where they had gotten into churches where the campaigns turned from an outright campaign with traditional signs to just like white supremacists used to do in the past, secret conversations. So a lot of their campaigning was through just informal conversations that they would pass on to each other in their churches. Oh, you have to vote for so-and-so because she's protecting our kids from pornography. Oh, you have to vote for so-and-so because, well, why don't you just quote these people's scripture? So, folks, this is what they've done. Rob, I want to add on to your playlist. Or actually, let me just reinforce something Rob said. So first it starts out with, oh my God, we have to improve achievement. And then now it moves on to this righteous journey, right? The self-righteousness. Our churches are going to get us right. Yeah. Okay, so that's what I've seen most in Missouri. We've had to battle the achievement and the churches, and that's a sad testament.
Jen, what about you? When did you start to notice like this is not normal?
So for me, it was definitely the churches. So when I moved from San Diego, which is generally a pretty liberal area, and when I moved up to Temecula, just the churches up here are hardcore, and this one church. They are the ones that got these school board members in, and during COVID, he actually got a city council member elected. And so watching her and watching that all go down was what really, that's when I started focusing on him, and then seeing, oh, now he's starting to go for school board members, and these are the people that he's backing. And so during the whole thing, I was very active in speaking out against the people that he was pushing. Because, so, for example, the city council member here, she's tried to make us a sanctuary city for the unborn. She tried to have the entire city speak out against Prop 1 when that was happening. She was spoken about nationally because she compared herself to Rosa Parks because she was being discriminated against for having to wear a mask during COVID. So, she was very much this is what, who they are. This is who this church is, and this is what they're going to do. And so they got 3 in Temecula, 2 in Murrieta, and 1 in a neighboring city, Lake Elsinore. And we knew, once I saw him pushing those, I knew how this was going to all go down.
So Amy, what about you? What resonates for you in where you are and what you're seeing as far as these kind of components?
Okay, hang on. I'm trying to get on here. Hi, everybody. Well, I'm in a pretty, what happened to my video? I'm in a pretty liberal area, supposedly. But what I'm hearing from you all, and what I think people should be listening for, is it doesn't matter. They can be running school board members and no one's paying attention, right? I mean, who cares about the damn school board? You look at those names on the ballot, you're like, I don't know, this name looks good to me, and you choose it, right? So the idea of being awake to what is happening on your school board, wherever you are, and running candidates. My campaign manager just ran for school board locally, and he won. So, there are successes. I think that we can, that just strikes me as a strategy. The other thing that strikes me is that we have a lot of younger Asian people. I'm not so young, but also I'm not so old. So we have a lot of younger Asian people getting together in our community, and we, as a group, we're relatively woke, right? So we are supporting there's a march for Black Lives to celebrate the memorial for George Floyd. We're doing it late after Juneteenth. And so the Asians here are supporting that. And I think that's important. I think that Asian people, like you all mentioned, some Chinese people are being targeted to try to divide the community so that these people gain some purchase in wherever we are. And